Checking in with the Fort Wayne Mad Ants. I'm here inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse where Terry Taylor and Kendall Brown, two Pacers signees, just played for the Mad Ants. We'll talk about those guys. A short interview with Gabe York, who played for the Pacers last year. Then Dane Moore is going to join us to talk Pacers-Timberwolves ahead of the Pacers' big game tonight as their schedule begins to ramp up. All that coming today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers as always. My name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes and SI, and today, as you can see if you're on YouTube, I'm in Gainbridge Fieldhouse because I just saw the Mad Ants play. Specifically, two Pacers played for the Mad Ants today. I want to talk about those guys, how they did, what it means for the Pacers. Plus, I got to talk to Gabe York. If you'll remember, he played for the Pacers for some time last season to close the season. 2 games, first 2 NBA games. He's been killing it in the G League this year. 4 30-plus point games already. The season's only been going for a couple weeks. Talk with him a little bit about his hot start playing with Tyrese Halliburton, TJ McConnell, and all these guys. You won't want to miss that. Then to close the show, Dane Moore from the Dane Moore NBA podcast going to join us to chat Timberwolves ahead of Pacers-Wolves tonight. A lot of fun coming on today's Locked On Pacers. We'll start with the Mad Ants, though, because, again, I am in Gainbridge Fieldhouse with the travel mic. If you hear any audio differences on your end, where the Mad Ants just kicked the Cleveland Chargers' butts 143-101. I'm not going to go through the standouts from the game. You can watch it on the G League website if you want at any time. But it was really fun to watch it in these settings when they play in Gainbridge, and because it's very easy for the Pacers to see their guys up front. A lot of front office guys there for the Pacers. Basically, I think actually the entire Pacers team showed up incrementally as the game went along. They played knockout together at halftime. If you want, I posted a video on my Twitter feed. Chris Duarte trying to cheat. He was promptly sent back to go again, and Goga Batadze eliminated him. So lots of fun. But in the physical game itself, 2 Pacers played. Terry Taylor sent down an assignment. He played last night for the Pacers. So let's talk about Terry Taylor's last 5 days. Plays against the Rockets in Houston last Friday. Plays against the Magic on Saturday. Plays on Sunday for the Mad Ants in Fort Wayne. Plays on Monday in Indianapolis for the Pacers. And then plays Tuesday for the Mad Ants here in Indy. And now has practice later today. He is a machine. So I was really interested to watch him again at this level, see what he can do. I wanted to see Kendall Brown up close in game action again. And, of course, any of these other guys could get promoted up to the Pacers at any time. Justin Anderson, who played, that happened to him last year. Same with Gabe York, right? They've got other talented guys. David Naservitas, who is with the Pacers for camp on this roster, so lots to dive into. But I'll start with the Terry Taylor report because he was awesome. He had 29 points and 18 rebounds for the Mad Ants on Sunday. I talked about that on Monday's podcast a little bit. Today, 32 points. He had 20-something at halftime. Only 6 rebounds because there weren't that many to get. He's an offensive rebounding machine. He had 4 of them, only 2 defensive boards. There weren't opportunities for him to get offensive rebounds. The Mad Ants shot so well from the field in this game, and he was controlling the game with his screen and roll play as he usually does, making life easier for everybody else. Mad Ants finished with 7 guys in double figures in this game, and that was the Terry Taylor effect, right? When he's at center, he can do the stuff that makes him better. He sets more screens. He's around the basket more. He's finishing plays within a couple feet of the basket. I talked to him a little bit about that after the game, right? That center is more natural for his skill set, but with the Pacers, he's asked to be on the perimeter a little more. And he said, no, it's not like difficult. He's just learning how to do new stuff, right? With the Pacers, he's adding in new skills, not just he's already a good offensive rebounder, but more so, how do I crash from the perimeter? What angles do I have to come from to be good at that skill, while also adding needed NBA skills for a guy his size, like a 3-ball, like a handle, things of that nature. He was fantastic for the Mad Ants, though, and still showed off that, one, he's just too good for the G League. Not that anyone's too good, air quotes, for the G League. Talent-wise, he's better than these G League guys, is what I mean to say. He was fantastic, once again, with 32 points, and 2, that he still, when he gets minutes at center, like we saw against the Magic on Saturday, when he completely changed the game in 5.5 minutes, can really impact a game in that way. And then Kendall Brown, the other Pacers signee who played, he's still got a lot of raw skills. He's a very interesting guy to watch, right? His shot isn't perfectly there. He was 6 for 15 in this game, missed all of his threes. Where he shows off his skills is 1 on defense and 2 with his athleticism when the ball is popping around. He had 12 points in this game on that 6 for 15 shooting. but he's still a plus 24 because he rebounded fantastically. He had 12 boards. He was the first player on the Mad Ants to reach double-digit rebounds. He also had 3 steals. His athleticism lets him stay in front of anybody, right? Nobody on the charge. Had a good shooting night. He defended former Pacer Nate Hinton quite a bit, who shot 11 for 23. For example, he defended ex-first-round pick Rashad Vaughn a few times, who was 0 for 4 in this game, right? He did a fantastic job defensively. So that's where I think he's come along the most. What I've seen with the Mad Ants is on the defensive end of the floor. I still think he's got some work to do in terms of shooting and handling, but he did look good in those 2 ways in this game. Ex-Pacer David Servitas hit 3 huge threes in a row, which made the Pacers, who were all watching, go crazy from the bench. He finished with 16 points. But another guy I want to talk about is Gabe York for many reasons. One being in this game, he was 10 for 18. He hit 6 threes. Again, in 29 minutes, he had 32 points. He's been fantastic for the Mad Ants this season. This season with Fort Wayne, 6 games played, 27.7 points per game, 52% from the field, 38% from deep for Gabe York, who played for the Pacers for the final 2 games of last season. And I never got to talk to him because he joined the team the very next day. They fly out to Philly, and then they play Brooklyn to close their season. I might have those 2 opponents backwards. But either way, they were on the road, and I had worked the day that he practiced in Indy, so I never talked to him before. So I got to talk to him today about, 1, playing extremely well for the Mad Ants, 2, playing alongside Tyrese Halliburton a little bit, playing with TJ McConnell, growing with the Pacers, and wanting to get back to the NBA, his hot start in general. It was a fun conversation, and I want to play it for all of you because when a player is balling to the effective Gabe York in the G League right now, I think fans need to know about him. If you made me pick right now who the most likely call-up is for the Pacers at some point this season, it would have to be Gabe York. He's been the best Mad Ants player, especially on offense so far this season. So get to know Gabe York a little bit before we talk Pacers-Wolves.
So you've had a hot start to this season, and your head coach has talked about he thinks your conditioning's better, you're in a little better shape. How much have those little things, after getting the taste of the NBA, helped you start strong this year?
Yeah, I think those extra 3 months being here in Indiana, working out with guys like Tyrese, Chris, it kind of gave me the formula to what I needed to just continue to get better. Playing one-on-one with guys like Tyrese, who's a top 10, top 5 point guard in the league right now. This year is, just gave me enough confidence to know, like, I can do this regardless of age, regardless of whatever. Like, I know I'm good enough to be in the NBA. It's just a matter of opportunity. And I kind of used those 3 months of being here, went home, and just amped it up for about two extra months, and it has my fault, and it showed.
I know you've been a scoring guard your whole career, but does this feel like a new level even for you?
Yeah, 4 of the 6 games so far, 30 balls. Last game ended abruptly on an and-one dunk that I got, I guess, a little too excited for. But that game, 3 dunks in a row, I was probably going for 30 that game too. It's not so much about me looking for the 30 ball. It's just my teammates are finding me. I'm hitting open shots, and like you said, I'm at a different level of conditioning. I've worked a lot harder than I feel a lot of even NBA guys have worked this offseason, and I think it's been showing these last 5 or 6 games.
You got the taste last year of the NBA. Is that now even more of a goal for you now that you've been there for a couple days?
They messed up. They messed up giving me them 2 games because now it's like I know that's where I belong. I know that because that feeling felt right. You know what I mean? If I'm 2 years old and I got a basketball I'm sleeping with, it's like I wasn't meant to go play overseas like that. The NBA was meant for me, and it was just a matter of opportunity and timing. So I'm going to just keep my head down, put one foot in front of the other, and hopefully my opportunity's coming soon.
I didn't get to talk to you about it in April, but was it a little nice for you, TJ McConnell, being on your team in college, that he's right back there when you get to the Pacers?
Come on, man. That's my guy. I love TJ to death. Great guy, great human off the court. And he's definitely somebody who was able to, Gabe, come on, man, I know what you do. I know who you are. Like, just get out there, be calm, be collected, play, hoop, do what you got to do. So having someone like him was definitely important for me for those 2 games to kind of know who I was, relax, and just set into the NBA game.
How do you think the talent on this Mad Ants team compares to some of the other G League squads you've been on?
My goodness, I don't know if there's a team here that's as talented as the team that we have. To cut out, you have 4 high-level vets, and then you got a lot of young guys who are eager and willing to work. So that gives you the answers to the test right there. We're going to be doing what we got to do to be successful. And like you said, this talent is second to none in the G League. So we just got to keep showing and improving ourselves.
You played with them last year, but how much does it help you guys having Terry around for a couple games?
My goodness, I just told a reporter, whatever, but I just told her over there, we knew what we were getting from TT. We knew exactly what he brings when he comes down here, and that's why he's in the NBA. And that's why he does what he does, is based off, he doesn't belong down here. So we know what we're getting out of him. I'm just glad I got to have him for a few games and he got to open up the offensive end for me. So great offensive rebounder, great screener, does all the little things, and then obviously the touch around the rim is what makes him great. So doesn't matter 6'5", 6'7", doesn't matter. He's going to get you that 30 and 15 somehow, some way.
Hope you all enjoyed that conversation. Now let's talk Pacers-Wolves tonight in Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Pacers schedule beginning to get tough. You can hear more about that on Tuesday's podcast. Wolves are the first example of that on a 4-game win streak. Dane Moore is going to join us to talk Pacers-Wolves. Before we talk about the Timberwolves, though, let me talk to you guys about Turo. Turo is the world's largest car-sharing marketplace. With Turo, you can book any car you want, wherever you want it, from a community of local hosts. You browse a huge selection of vehicles for just about any occasion or budget across the U.S., UK, Canada, and coming soon, Australia. You can book a spacious SUV or a minivan if you're going on a family road trip. You can get a classic or luxury car for some special event or a birthday or a holiday. You can find affordable economy cars if you're just on a budget and trying to get from point A to point B. Test drive that new electric vehicle you've had your eye on. See how it fits your everyday life. And many Turo hosts can even deliver the car right to you. Super easy. Every trip is backed by liability insurance. Terms and conditions and exclusions apply. Forget boring rental cars. Find your drive at Turo.com. Now, let's bring in Dane Moore to talk Pacers, Timberwolves. Thanks for making Locked On Pacers your first listen today and every single day. Always appreciated. Ben Bakeen and the Locked On Timberwolves podcast should be your second listen to get to know more about the opposition ahead of tonight's game. Now, let's talk Pacers-Wolves. Dane Moore is here, host of the Dane Moore NBA show, covering the Minnesota Timberwolves for, forever. My favorite on that Minnesota beat. And it's going to be a fun one in Gainbridge Fieldhouse on Wednesday night because the Pacers surging 5 wins in a row. The Timberwolves surging finally 4 wins in a row for Minnesota. Something's got to give. Dane, what's gotten into the Wolves? Why are they suddenly getting over their little bugaboos from the early season?
Yeah, well, I think Timberwolves fans would be frustrated for me to say this. And we're actually we're going to record this or put this on my podcast feed as well. The Wolves fans are frustrated when you say that it has to do with the opponents that they've played, not being at full strength. But that is, that's part of the story here. It's not the entire story of why the Wolves are on a 4-game winning streak, but they beat Cleveland to start the 4-game winning streak without Donovan Mitchell and Jared Allen. They beat Orlando in Orlando without everyone on Orlando. It's the same, as injured as Orlando was last night against Indiana. No Banchero, none of those guys played in that game. They played Philadelphia. They played Philadelphia without Tyrese Maxey and James Harden on Saturday, and then last night they beat Miami, who is a little bit more at full strength, but no Tyler Hero, no Jimmy Butler. That's still pretty banged up too. So that's a factor in why they've won 4 in a row. But the biggest factor, and this sounds super simplistic, is they did not play hard at the beginning of the season. They did not pass the ball at the beginning of the season, and they have said that. Chris Finch continues to say that is an issue. They are playing harder. They're moving the ball some more, but they have these 10-minute stretches of games where they stop playing hard. They stop moving the ball. And it's where teams either get back in the game against them or, blow up a lead, from 8 to 22. So they're still very much in the stage of figuring this out. I think it's been frustrating at times to watch that the figuring out has to do with effort. But that is the very simplistic answer, though a little bit long for what's going on with the Wolves right now.
Pacers had that problem last year to the point of, Rick Carlisle, every game I think said they're not playing with force for months. To the point that after one game against the Hawks, they had such a crummy first half effort-wise. Before media availability, you'll be the only person here who appreciates this. They watched the entire first half in the locker room. So we didn't get anybody on the podium for almost an hour. But that was a problem that they had. And it's strange that can be a thing for teams, but it totally can't. It can be hard to get into it when your team isn't playing well, you're not settled in. But 4 wins in a row will certainly get you over that. And I was really high on the Wolves
coming into this year. So I'm feeling a little validated, even if it is for injury reasons, which the Pacers themselves
It's
have
not
benefited from.
exclusively. It's not exclusively injury reasons. It is a factor though, and sometimes honestly, like that's what you need, right? Like you need something to be different. I think part of it too is like the Wolves got on the road for a while. They've been getting booed at home, so you like go out on the road and win a couple of games. Like honestly, I think that stuff can make a difference.
Yeah, the Pacers' 5-game winning streak is Orlando twice, no Banchero, like you mentioned. Houston, which injuries doesn't matter now. Charlotte, LaMelo got hurt in the game, and the Raptors without anybody, right? So they've played very well in the 5 games, like deserving 5 wins. But the same kind of deal is involved. That said, I was really high on Minnesota coming into this year. I loved the idea of the 2 bigs, yin and yang, both ends of the floor. It made sense to do it in a year where Anthony Edwards looks like he's going to take the step and ascend. And don't smirk, because I thought all of these things would happen, and so far none of them have happened. But big picture, the big experiment, it's only 17 games, right? Like there's going to be multiple seasons of this core era, whatever you want to call it, for Minnesota. But why hasn't it gotten off to the start that many, including myself, thought it would?
Yeah, I think like to focus on the Gobert part of this, right? Like that's the addition, that's the change, and there was kind of like this theory, and it sounds weird to compare Jared Vanderbilt to Rudy Gobert because Rudy's like 6 inches taller than him, but in a lot of ways, in all seriousness, like we went into the season thinking, Rudy was just going to kind of do the Vanderbilt role, but like be souped up, right? Like be able to defend the rim at a higher level. Be able to be more of a pick and roll lob threat than Vanderbilt was. But there wasn't really any sort of idea that it could hurt, because Vanderbilt wasn't really doing anything off offense. He doesn't shoot or didn't shoot. Apparently he's shooting now in Utah. He just kind of sat in the dunker spot. So you're like, okay, everything Vanderbilt does, like Rudy should on both sides of the floor be able to do it better. What was interesting is like right off the bat, they started like featuring Rudy on offense. And there was this idea of like unlocking him. That was the term they were using in Carl all the time. Be like, we're trying to unlock Rudy. And that's it. Let's say that didn't work. They're getting away from it. Like I'm talking about like post ups and that sort of thing where you're like not the typical way you think about Rudy. And it hasn't worked. So they peeled that back some. But the thought was, we're trying to maximize Rudy because, what happened in the last 2, playoffs for Utah is Dallas and the Clippers, they went 5 out and they put like a 6'7" guy on Rudy, and on offense, he couldn't do anything against those guys, right? Like he hadn't practiced at all during the season, like being a post up 5, because all Utah did all regular season forever was just run, spread, pick and roll. So when it came to the playoffs and they're like, all right, you're playing the Clippers who can switch 5. Like the natural recourse is, you want to just take that switch and you want to roll your big into the post and you want to post them up and like take advantage of that small. Well, Rudy doesn't have that skill set. So the thought was with Finch is like, let's develop that. Like, let's try it. Like Utah didn't even try it. They didn't even want to like go there. And Finch kind of has this belief in Rudy, and he still wants to take advantage of those situations when they can, but Rudy's struggling, man, to be able to really do anything like straight post up wise. And like if he catches it right in front of the rim, he could turn around and dunk it, but he does not have like a right shoulder, left shoulder sort of move he can do on the block. And what I think has been frustrating, what I disagree with of that is this trying to unlock Rudy has come at the cost of running way less spread pick and roll. And that was kind of the whole idea, right? You're like, all right, you got Ant, you got D'Lo who can play pick and roll. Maybe Rudy will unlock D'Lo in a spread pick and roll game, something the Wolves have not had a rolling big in forever. And then they just haven't gone to it much, man. And it's kind of maddening. I'm like, that's what Rudy does. Like, I understand the idea of wanting to have it, have that in your bag for the playoffs, but it's been frustrating how little spread pick and roll they've played, given how that's clearly what Rudy is best at offense, like kind of the only thing outside of offensive rebounding he's good at. And we all believed that the trade would really help boost D'Angelo Russell's value. or just like impact on the game. And when you're not running pick and roll as much, like we're not seeing that. And D'Lo's really kind of struggled to start the season as well, trying to kind of navigate all of this. And so last night we have started to see a little bit more pick and roll. They played Miami, who plays like exclusively zone, so you can't really run pick and roll against that. But that's been a big factor. Rudy, the change there, and he's just not playing the same way as Utah. Like they're intentionally not playing the same way.
I thought D'Lo is certainly a guy involved in this. I thought Ant would get a little boost as well. Just like Gobert's the top 5 screener in the NBA. Just even that alone, without rolling, helps your dynamic score and
I like how you said top 5 because you want to give like Sabonis a shout there, right?
I do. I think Sabonis is number 1, and I covered it for years. So Sabonis is also the master of like that. Marcin Gortat was really good at this. That thing where they put their hands on their shoulders, and then they totally like move. It's a totally moving screen, but it looks like they're just running, so they're like twice as wide. Sabonis is so good at that. Yeah, Gobert's up there though. Whatever, second behind Domas. I thought that would help unlock Ant, especially his playmaking in a way that hasn't shown up in the limited opportunities I've gotten to watch Minnesota. That said, high level, especially defensively, it seems like a lot of the stats are like, hey, this is what you expect from Gobert's team. They give up no 2s and a lot of 3s, the second most 3s in the league this season. And that's when I think this game is going to get fascinating. Because, Dane, let me tell you about the Indiana Pacers for a second. They talked about 2 things they wanted before the season: athleticism and shooting. They have it. Tyrese Halliburton can shoot from anywhere, anytime, off the dribble, on the catch, much better off the dribble. The strangest phenomenon. Buddy Hield's having another resurgent season. Actually, I haven't looked at his stats since he was 1 for 10 last night. So maybe not looking so resurgent right now, but in general, a resurgent season. Miles Turner as well. Their bench units have been draining 3s. Aaron Nesmith just made 5 in a game. TJ McConnell just made 3 in a game. That's not going to happen again. But in general, they've been an excellent shooting team. And because they have such strong decision makers and guys who can adapt throughout the game, that is where I think that they will do well against Minnesota. Is they have the guys who can dribble, drive, and make defenses move around enough that you tell me if this is actually a concern for Minnesota or if it's just a natural reflex of Rudy Gobert making it impossible to score at the rim. I think the Pacers are going to get a lot of open 3s against this Timberwolves team.
This episode is brought to you by BetOnline.net, your number 1 source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. They've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, guess what? You can find those on BetOnline as well. They've got the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix every single day. If you're interested in Thanksgiving football lines, heck yeah, they've got them. Bills favored by 10 in Detroit against the Lions. Cowboys favored by 9.5 at home against the Giants. And my Vikings favored by 2.5 at home against the Patriots. All those lines and more up at betonline.net. Check them out. Head to that website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in the action, because BetOnline is where the game starts.
Yeah, so again, this kind of has some context to of last season to this season. So the Wolves, like Karl-Anthony Towns played drop for the first 6 years of his career, and the Wolves were a bottom 10 defense every single year of that time, oftentimes like 28th, right? Karl-Anthony Towns is not a drop coverage center, even though they tried to square peg him into that round hole for the whole beginning of his career. So kind of like honestly, one of the biggest things last season is they took Karl out of drop, and like literally every single high pick and roll, they would put 2 on the ball, and they call it the high wall. And so you try and like bring Karl all the way up there, force the ball, like in this matchup, force the ball out of Halliburton's hands, right? Like get it out of the guy who is going to, distribute to everyone, right? And it worked, man. They were like 13th in defense last season. That's why that's why they made the playoffs, because they were able to find a capable defense for the first time in Cat's career. Now you add Rudy Gobert, and what is Rudy Gobert? He's the best drop coverage center in the league. So the Wolves tried in the first 12 games of the season to be like, all right, when Rudy's in, we're going to play drop. When Karl's in at the 5 and Rudy's on the bench, we're going to stick with that high wall. Well, that proved to be way too complicated. And that led to, it's like, even the numbers, anything. It was just a disaster. Nothing worked. And so what they've pivoted off of is they've stopped doing the high wall coverage. So I say that to mean that you're going to see a lot of that drop coverage, which to your point leads to, you're going to have the middle of the floor there. Obviously, you can take those mid-range shots if you want, but you can also kind of spray the ball around from there. And the Wolves, again, don't always play that hard. So Haliburton can get in there, Neesmith, Hield, whatever, probably going to be able to get some clean looks. Though what they have added is they just started to switch a lot. Even when Rudy's on the floor, they'll switch 4. Rudy won't switch. But if Rudy is off the floor, they will switch a lot, which I think actually takes away, the 3-point volume some too. So when they get to that, what Indiana is going to need to do is have somebody who can penetrate and get into the teeth of the defense. I would think going into this game, they're going to be extra intentional about that because, you tell me, that as great of a season as Haliburton is having, he's not that guy who's going to get all the way to the rim, go into Rudy and finish on him. You know what I'm saying? So I would try and stay home, switch as much as you can, and make someone, maybe it's Mathurin, be able to get to the rim in this matchup. Because from where I stand, they don't really have the personnel to really be able to get to that.
I think you can cut off Haliburton at the rim, but I have a lot of context to add there too. I think the Pacers are daring teams to say, Mathurin, try to stop him from driving. That dude get it all the way to the rim against anybody. That's what's made him actually awesome as a rookie. Well, I say actually, but a positive NBA player as a rookie is rare, and he's been that and more because he can get to the rim and draw fouls like crazy. And what makes him so effective, and what I think will matter against Minnesota, is he's really good at getting wiggling free off the ball, so he already has a half-step advantage on the catch, right? So if you're switching, that naturally is that half-step advantage on the catch if you're ready for it. Right? That's how they figured out Orlando. They beat Orlando by 1 on Saturday. It took them a while to figure out their switching defense, but then they knew it for Monday. They beat them by 21 because they were prepared to have those advantages and get a little deeper on their drives into the teeth of the defense. Even if you don't get all the way to the rim, one extra half step creates more angles, more geometry, things like that. Minnesota specifically is different because the defender is there and Rudy Gobert. And so I don't think Mathurin will have the success he's had recently. He just had 22 Monday night. But Haliburton's interesting because he's talked about adding the aggression to his game, and that's what's made him a 20-10 guy. He shoots enough to get to 20 points, and he's efficient. He's also added a shot that I don't know what to call it. It's like a hook shot, but also it's in front of his body, and it's a layup from the right side, but it's sort of a jumper because he's in the air. Some have affectionately called it the tie hook instead of the sky hook, which I think is okay. You'll probably see 2 of them, 2 or 3 a game. I think is the number he gets to. I don't think he picks that out. It's just how many he ends up taking. That is a shot that if it goes in twice, all of a sudden you're the guy around the basket. You're like, uh-oh, I got to step out because this random little 5-foot whatever the heck this is going to go in over my head. And so that has added an element of if that's in your video package scouting report, if you're Minnesota and your video coordinator cuts it up a few times, you got to think about it when he's coming at you. And then he knows you're thinking about it. So he's looking for the pass behind you or whatever it is. So yeah, I think they don't have the best rim finishing. A lot of their rim percentages, Miles Turner's roll game has doubled in impact this season. And, that Mathurin and Haliburton have been great at the rim. And Isaiah Jackson's one of the better lob threats they've had in a long time. So they've been getting good rim finishing, but I don't think they've played a team with elite rim protection yet in the way Minnesota has, which I think will really show what kind of development they've had on that end of the floor. And can the tie hook, I don't love that nickname, but just to keep using it, work against a guy like Gobert? Can Mathurin get all the way to the rim against a team that is really good at drop, right? Can Turner still roll and find the angles against teams that are good at drop? Because he's been a pop guy his whole career, and he knows how to roll. He's a center, but adding it to his game will be something interesting. Does any type of player typically do well against the Wolves? And if so, do the Pacers have them? Then I can explain how they will do well in this matchup.
Yeah, well, so what I think is really interesting about this, and for my listeners, Mathurin is coming off the bench, and maybe you can help me understand when he plays, because I think this will be important. The Wolves have one point of attack defender on their roster, and he's really good. It's Jaden McDaniels. Honestly, he'll be a problem for Haliburton if he doesn't get in foul trouble. He's 6'11". He looks like a praying mantis. The problem is when Jaden's not on the floor, it's kind of like it's maybe Ant. None of their real bench guys like Kyle Anderson is a solid defender, but he can't get out and like move with a point guard. Dorian Prince is more of a 3-4. Like they just don't have the stuff. So I wonder, like, if I'm Indiana, I'm like, this should be a real opportunity for Mathurin to get to the rim, because Jaden's not going to be on him. And a lot of those times too, that would be when Gobert was off the floor too. So you wouldn't have that rim defense that you're talking about being scary there. But how does it work with like Mathurin's rotation? How often is he going to be out there against Wolves starters, or how often does he play with Indiana starters?
He's not their first sub. I think they usually do a front court player first because the Jalen Smith was promised a starting spot this offseason. I don't know if they knew if they'd have Turner going into the year, but they start Jalen Smith and Turner in the front court, and that's a fine duo, but they get a little more success out of others. So those are front court sub first, and then Mathurin's usually the second sub. And I've been tracking this all season, but like 65%, 70% of Mathurin's minutes have been with Halliburton still, even though he comes off the bench. So he still plays quite a bit with the starting five. Halliburton himself is at like 50% of his minutes, a little under with Mathurin. Right? So they still play a ton together. So like recently, like last week especially, this is a new trend. So I don't know if it's just the opponents they had or something I should keep tracking. He was more like Mathurin was more combined with the second unit and wasn't closing games as much. But in general, all season, he's been close to a 30 minutes guy who plays with the starters quite often as, a very good scorer. And, Rick Carlisle loves to be creative with lineups. He's very good at it. So if they need defense, they'll go to Nesmith, or if they need a front court punch, they'll go Jackson, Turner, and then Mathurin's the casualty. But a lot of the times he is, he's the second sub, but he'll stick with the starters for like a little mix in the middle of the second quarter and then in the middle of the fourth quarter. And he closes a lot of games because, he can score 20 points on NBA players already. So, he will be out there with a lot of different units, but he does come off the bench, but he effectively plays starter minutes and with that group enough to call him that.
It's interesting that 70% of the minutes are with Halliburton, and because
I'll give you an exact number, but I'm pretty sure it's about right.
Yeah. Well, whatever. In that range, it's a lot. It's not like he's right. Halliburton's backup. So then, if you're the Wolves, you're gonna have to put Ant on one of them and Jaden on the other. And Ant can be really good on ball. He's really bad off ball. So then in that match, I think this will kind of be a pretty like critical part of this game is like how good Ant can be on ball. Like, because Jaden will be good on the ball. So they can stop both of those there. I think it'll come down to if Ant has a good on ball game and if Mathurin or Halliburton really have the ability to punish Ant off ball, he gets lost a lot. And I think that's why I would put Ant on Mathurin in those situations and then Jaden on Halliburton, because Halliburton would be more the guy who could you could run a pin down for him and get the open threes. He's going to make him at a 40% clip. But that'll be interesting. I think that'll be the matchup. And on the Wolves side, be really, really, important of how much they're able to slow them, because the rest of the guys, not like Buddy, Buddy can get hot or whatever, or Turner obviously is shooting better. I'm not too concerned about him like in the roll game again punishing Rudy. I really look at the guard play, in this matchup as it pertains to the Wolves slowing down the Pacers offense. That's been pretty good this season, really good lately, right?
Yes, incredibly good, like top 5 in the league, and that's all Halliburton. To answer my question now, because I was curious, I was right to hedge and say that last week they've been split up a little more. 57% of his minutes.
Okay,
still a lot. That was mostly for me. I don't think your listeners care about the exact specific number.
No, dude, it matters. It's going to matter for this matchup because again, like those are the only two guys the Wolves can put on ball with any success. They're probably going to try and hide D'Lo on like Nesmith if he's out there, whatever it might be. So I think that's
maybe Andrew Nembhard if he plays, right? Something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. That'll be the cross matches have been interesting. Like the Pacers have very rarely started a game been like, 1 through 5 straight up defense. Let's go. Like they can't. they can't with the groups that they have. That's part of why Mathurin doesn't start. Like Carlisle makes it sound so simple, and it is. But it's funny because a lot of people think like, you have this 20-point per game score. Why isn't he starting? And Rick's like, it's not better for us. Why would we do that? We need someone who can defend in the starting five. He still plays a bunch. Like, it doesn't matter. And he's right. But that's why they start Andrew Nembhard or Aaron Nesmith, because they need to be able to cross match to defend okay in the starting five. And I think the Pacers are going to struggle with Ant. I mean, they have historically, I think, what do you have last year in that overtime game they played in Minnesota? I mean, Ant almost hit the game winner at the end of regulation too. But
44, I think.
Yeah, he was fantastic. And he's not tall, but he's like stocky. You cover him. I don't need to explain Anthony Edwards to you. He's got the build of guys that the Pacers have struggled with for years, and that's brawny wing types, brawny guard types. They just have never had. They've had okay perimeter defenders like Justin Holiday and this year Aaron Nesmith and Chris Duarte, who won't play, but they don't have the guys with the strength combination to also hang with those guys. And that's why Ant typically has done well against the Pacers, and why, it's obvious to say, the Star is going to be a tough matchup, but defending Anthony Edwards is going to be very hard for the Pacers given his style of play. In his career, he's averaged about 23.5 against the Pacers per game, which is above his career averages. Just a very talented player. And the other guy I'm worried about from a Pacers perspective, I can't believe I'm saying this, Kyle Anderson, because of a similar thing. He's got the size and the funk to throw the Pacers off. They want to play fast all the time. Go, go, go. Even when the ball goes flying out of bounds in the middle of the game, you'll see this when they come to the Target Center early December. The ball will go out of bounds, and they'll just sprint to try to get it from the crowd so they can run in transition like on a dead ball. It's like they just want to play fast, fast, fast. Kyle Anderson never wants to play fast, to the point of success for him. That's why the Slow-Mo nickname has lasted so long and has been so affectionate. It's because the slow has worked. So I think those two guys will do wonders against the Pacers. And Kyle Anderson's just good. Like he can shoot and play defense, things like that.
He didn't play last night. He's been kind of dealing with some back spasms.
Well, he should play, so I sound smart on a Wednesday.
No, I mean, and I don't like. I'm assuming it was more like a rest sort of thing. I don't know exactly. What's been interesting with Anderson is he's really helped the Wolves' offense this far this season and really hurt the defense, which I think you wouldn't expect. Like if you've ever seen Kyle Anderson take a jump shot, but as I was talking about, like with the ball movement has just been so critical to get the Wolves offense off the ground. And that's often when things get stagnant, Finch will go to Anderson to just inject ball movement into the group, or Jordan McLaughlin, the backup point guard, to inject ball movement into the group. But with Anderson, it's been a real struggle defensively. The Wolves have defensively rebounded terribly this season, which is another theme from last year that we're all over here like, what the hell? Like, you added Rudy Gobert, you're still terrible, at defensive rebounding. But Anderson kind of, goes both sort of ways. But I think it's a good point, to just in general, not even Anderson specifically, to bring up the pace that Indiana is playing with this season. Because, honestly, like Indiana is good. I'm not saying they're not good, but like we always say try hard is has a negative connotation to it. But like the Wolves struggle against try hard teams. Like the Spurs they've already played the Spurs 3 times this year, and the Spurs were they got the scout and they were like, run. And no, I'm just saying, like, the Wolves don't try hard. So
right.
So when you're running against, like when you're constantly running against the Wolves, like that's a way to really like beat them, get them on their heels. Like they will stall out when they do that. So I think knowing that Indiana is going to play hard is something that I think, could be a real advantage for them in just playing with pace in this game.
What a bizarre scheduling quirk that Minnesota got San Antonio, the only stretch of the season when they were playing well, potentially.
There might be some correlation there. The Wolves were not. It was the first 5 games of the year, I think.
No, the Spurs beat the Pacers this season too, so I have a first-hand account. They scored 137. I went on my podcast before they gave it. I said, the Spurs have no creators. This game will be all about defense. Can the Pacers get enough stops? They scored 137. Yeah. Oh, good. I'm off to a flying start this season of poor predictions. Last question for me about the Wolves has nothing to do with this game. But the Pacers they were supposed to be, I should say, entering a rebuild for the first time in, good Lord, a long time, a very long time. And I like to know what other teams did well. I asked the Nets, some Nets coverage people about it. They did a good job identifying fringe talent. Same with the Heat, and the Grizzlies, for example, did a good job taking on bad salary to get good draft picks, and they drafted amazing, like best in the league. Every team does some little thing well along the way to go from where they were to where they are. And so from a Wolves perspective to you, 2 first picks helps. Please don't say 2 first overall picks, but what has Minnesota done well to build this team?
Yeah, well, if we get into kind of like some more of that minutia, like the Grizzlies and Nets thing, like this sounds weird to bring up a player that is no longer on the team, but they got Patrick Beverley a year ago before the season for Jarrett Culver and Juancho Hernangomez, who are fringe NBA players.
Right.
Culver busted in a major way, and Juancho was signed with high aspirations here, and similarly busted in his time, but like no picks. That was straight up. And then what the Wolves did before Tim Connolly took over, Sachin Gupta was the interim president of basketball operations, and he gave Beverly a mid-season contract extension for $13 million, which provided the Wolves $13 million in. I mean, I would argue. I mean, I know Beverly's not doing much with the Lakers right now, but kind of like surplus value, at least neutral, value to be able to send out to Utah to be able to go get Gobert, right? Like, it wasn't just that the Wolves gave up 5 first-round picks. Like, they didn't give up bad money to Utah. They gave $16 million to Malik Beasley, $13 million to Patrick Beverley, like $4 million of Jared Vanderbilt. And that ended up being able, like, and then Leandro Balmaro and what was in that as well. Like that brought back Rudy without sending out bad money, which didn't, like, it sounds crazy to say. If it would have been bad money, it would have needed to be even more picks. But like, if it was D'Angelo Russell was the matching salary in that situation, the Wolves probably would have had to give out even more picks than they did, if that makes sense. So I know that sounds like kind of small, and it kind of like, for this to even be a good thing, like the Gobert trade needs to prove to be a good move for this team, which I think is still somewhat of it is an open question at this time. But I think that was like low key made the Gobert trade be able to happen. And then, they had 2 first overall picks.
Yeah, that part is especially with the new lottery, right? Because Cat was old lottery odds. That's ridiculous to repeat. I mean, Houston staying in the top 4 the last 2 years is insanely lucky. Like, I don't think people realize how lucky the Rockets have been the last 2 years. To their credit, they've been an awful team, but
we look at OKC the other way. It's like
right. So since Pritchard took over the Pacers, I think their worst contracts have been Tyreek Evans, which was only 1 year. They got very lucky that they were short on that. And then 2 on the team right now. TJ McConnell's contract is fine, and Daniel Tice is the other one. He didn't sign it. They have it on their team now as a result of the Brogdon trade. I think that's something that's helped them as well, is they've done well not having bad deals, and they love flexibility. They use a million different words to talk about it. Opportunistic, all that sort of stuff. And having no bad contracts makes it possible, right? So that is a key part of being able to, like, if you ever want to make a big trade, and hey, the Pacers might want to this season, if they continue to be good, they might not, but if they do, having great contracts on the books is certainly a factor. Dane, we are 11 minutes over what I told you we would do, so my apologies for that. Thank you so much for the time. Where can people follow you and all your work covering the fun and spunky and confusing Minnesota Timberwolves?
Yep, no, it's easy. Dane Moore NBA podcast, 4 or 5 days a week. I used to, cover the Wolves as like a pseudo beat writer type of guy, and I've just moved into doing all the same sort of stuff, daily podcasts rather than the daily writing there. And then, just follow me on Twitter at Dane Moore NBA. And if your listeners are going on a Thanksgiving trip right now, and you're on the airplane or in the car, and you want to learn a little bit more about the Wolves too, had the Wolves main beat writer on this week, and then also on my most recent episode, this episode, kind of covered that Miami game and what's kind of gone into this 4-game winning streak. So appreciate you having me and for letting me use this too. I think my listeners will appreciate it as well.
Of course, if you are on Dane's show, I'm Tony East. I cover the Pacers here on Locked On Pacers every day, and for writing on this beat of this somehow 10-6 Indiana Pacers. Looking forward to this game. I'm on Twitter at TEastNBA. Dan, we've got to get NBA out of our handle, so hopefully Elon takes our checks away and makes it very easy for us to change our Twitter feeds. Back tomorrow on my end, talking Pacers, Wolves, whatever happened, all those sorts of things. Yes, that's right. You're getting a Thanksgiving podcast from me. Be thankful. Be thankful. Everybody have a great week and holiday. If you're taking time off, please enjoy it with your family. Be safe. See you soon.